recorded live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the Jenna Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. My name is William Hayashi. I'm a writer, author, radio personality, ordained minister, which we were just discussing off the air, and a bunch of other things. But we're not here to talk about William as much as we would like to. This is the January 24th edition, 2014, and our special guest today is Hobbie. It is Hobbie, right?
Roger, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And he's a writer and an artist. If you want to check out some of his work, actually, Al, should we send them to Facebook or should they check out your work that you have posted at the site?
Well, Indie Planet is the best place to check out my work. I'll put up a link there. There's a link.
Okay, cool. And of course, those people who pick this up as a podcast, shame on you for waiting to hear the show, and you're just going to have to check out Al at BSFS. So welcome to the show, man. I mean, where are you coming to us from today?
Right now I'm in Waynesville, Missouri. I was in the military and I retired here. I'm originally from Montgomery, Alabama, but like I say, I had to get away from the South, and actually I think it's worse here.
Well, we don't want to do any value judgments that the Chamber of Commerce or the Tourism Board would get upset about. But
you're right.
But let's go back to earlier. I mean, you know, you're an artist and a writer.
Roger.
You know, when I talk to most artists, and I say, okay, so when did your the artistic bent start manifesting itself? You know, they always start talking. You know, they say, well, you know, when I picked up a crayon at 3 years old or 4 years old or whatever. I mean, which for you came first, the artist part, or did you have the imagination as a writer?
The artist part. In the early days, you know, you'd watch Hanna-Barbera, you know, you'd watch Yogi Bear and stuff like that, and you go, oh, you know, you'd pick up a pencil and you try to mimic it, and after a while, you know, you got pretty good at it. So I was like, hey, this is great. This is what I want to do. And you know, everybody in the housing project love an artist. I don't know what it is when people see pictures and they like, hey, that looks just like on television. So they encourage you to do that. But as I got older, you know, and like a lot of artists say, you know, art is a lot of work. You know, you're bent over a table for, you know, 2 to 3 hours. And after a while, it just got to the point where, you know, art was great, but I love the story behind the art.
And so were you creating your own kind of creative universes at that young age? And about how old was that, Al?
I started around, I was going to Booker T. Washington Elementary School in Montgomery, and I started around then because, you know, I had this set group of friends, you know, me being a religious geek, and I was religious, plus I love Star Trek, which was kind of, nobody liked that at the time in my family. They said, oh, that stuff right there is not right for you. You know, it's science fiction. It wasn't called science fiction at the time, but, you know, they really didn't like that. And I liked, you know, science fiction at the time. So I was kind of, you know, a church geek and, you know, a science fiction geek. So, you know, and you know how great Star Trek stories are. They're political. They're really deep. So, you know, that's kind of when, you know, my artistic side, you know, came out.
Right. But again, you know, you're talking about elementary school age. You know what? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there.
Roger. Okay. Yes.
And so you're in the projects. You're able to conceptualize art, both original and copies, right? You copy things for people. Did they ask you to do something, you know, almost like commission you to do? Hey, draw me a picture of.
Oh yes. Yeah,
so
that's how
cool.
it started. I mean, that's how you get your accolades in the housing project. I mean, you really can't do anything else but man, that guy could draw, man, and then you become known for that, and people support you for that.
Well, that's pretty cool. Did you ever make any money at it at that young age?
Later on in junior high school, I did, but not early. I was just, when you're in, that young, you're just happy to draw anything for anybody.
And what about in school? Were you encouraged in school?
Oh yes. I don't know. George Wallace. Before he died, he decided he was going to run again for governor. And when he did, oddly enough, the blacks supported him. So I happened to be in school at the time, and one of my history teachers came over and says, "Al, I understand you're a really good artist." And I said, "Yeah," and he said, or she said, "I want you to draw this thing for me, and it's for Governor Wallace, his comeback, So I had to draw this big banner, for, Governor Wallace, and they were, when you have something like that in high school, you become pretty popular,
Oh, sure. Well, one of the things that a couple Southern friends of mine, actually they were friends of my parents, because said about George Wallace was it was kind of not a relief, but kind of refreshing that you knew exactly where he came, where he was coming from in terms of integration.
Right.
He may not have been, on the same page as integrationists, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evans, or anything like that. But you always knew where you stood with him because he was an honest man.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
fine.
He knew how to play the field.
Yeah.
The politics.
So you're going ahead, you're doing that kind of drawing and things like that. You get into high school, and where did things go from there?
Basically, in high school, that's where you start to make your money. You'll have guys come around and people come around and say, "Hey, that guy's an artist. Do this for me, do that." So I made a little money in high school, but nothing, major. I didn't think, "Hey, I'll be doing this for the rest of my life." So I was good, but and with artists, there's always different styles. We had there was a friend of mine named Miguel. He was really good at the spray paint art. He can take a couple of cans of spray paint and create a masterpiece. Whereas I had to sit over a table for hours, and draw and sketch, and ink it out. So, like I said, I didn't make a lot of money at it, and I knew, hey, this was not going to be, well, I take that back. When I was in high school, I thought, hey, one day I'm going to get out, I'm going to make my own cartoon. But, the reality of that is, you're just not going to run off to Hollywood or New York City, or at the time I think it was Hollywood where all the cartoons were being made. You're not just going to run there and just, hey, I'm here, okay, give that guy a cartoon, So I had the dream, but I knew it wasn't a realistic dream. I knew I had to work at a bottle factory or, somewhere like that, the post office.
Well, the reality, I think that's good that at that age you had the good grounding to know that all of a sudden, you're not going to become a hit.
Right.
A lot of people aren't that well grounded. They go, well, I can draw this, I can draw that. I should be able to get discovered immediately and move on.
Yes.
And it just, that's the equivalent of getting hit by lightning. Same thing for everybody who wants to be a rapper or who wants to be.
Oh my God.
You got guys who can hit a nice jumper on the basketball court, think they're going to tear up the NBA. So
yes.
It just speaks well of you being more realistically grounded. So from high school, where did you go from high school?
Well, like I say, in Montgomery, Alabama at the time, there weren't that many jobs. So, you're headed toward, this is your senior year, what are you going to do? And, you got all this support from everybody saying, oh, you're, like you said, you're a great artist. That's what you should do, man. That's your passion. But I'm like, yeah, but, who's going to pay me? This is Montgomery, Alabama. We're in the middle of like I said, it's a black hole. I mean, Montgomery is what it is. It's a black hole, and it is that way. Or Alabama, it is that way because it's Alabama. So nobody goes there to be a cartoonist or something like that. So you have to leave and go to either Hollywood or or New York. So basically, when my options came up, it was basically what every other black male option was. Either you go to jail or go to prison or you go into the military. So when the Army came, hey, you guys are pretty healthy. Want to go into the Army? So I was like, okay, my options are limited. And well, I had the choice of going to college first.
Right.
My mother, she saved the money. She said, well, I want you to go to college. And you look back now, you're like, maybe I should have went to college, but I'm kind of glad I didn't because I went into the military. I joined the Army, and I think it was a good tour.
Yeah. Well, okay, and what did you do in the Army?
Oh, I originally went in as a tank driver.
Okay. And
when you get in the Army, you realize, hey, there's other jobs within the Army. But I went in as a combat, tank driver, and and then you rise up to tank commander. But I realized after that, I said, hey, do you guys have any artists? And they just wasn't giving those jobs out, in those days, especially the black people. I didn't know anybody who was in photography or any kind of news service or anything like that. So I changed my job over to water purification, and that turned out pretty good. And then after a couple of years in water purification, I just decided, to switch over to chemical. So I was a chemical engineer.
Okay. And while you're in the Army, even though you had no official outlet for your creativity, did you still draw, or did you kind of put it on the side?
Oh, yes. I mean, I created, in elementary school, I created Cahaba County. And it was basically just a cartoon about me and my friends, my close-knit friends. And, it was fun. You show your friends, hey, this is what you did in the last episode, and this was, it was fun. It pulled everybody together. You could put it in the school newspaper, and everybody's, great. And, and it's basically you drew it just to get pats on the back. But, I've always drawn. I mean, I draw when I'm depressed. I draw when I'm happy. It drove my ex-wife crazy. She says, well, why are you always drawing? I mean, you're never going to make anything out of it. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I just like to draw, so.
Yeah, I understand that because I've been an IT guy since 1970. My first job was with IBM in 1970. Wow. And my wife would look at me in the study while I'm working on the computer and say, well, when are you going to be done playing over there? So believe me, I understand how other people don't always see how your job, what really is. It's an avocation. It's a creative avocation.
Yes.
That people don't always attribute, a seriousness to, that you obviously have or I obviously have.
They think you're playing.
Yeah.
Or they think you're having fun.
Yeah. So you get kicked loose from the service, and you were there for a while. You did what? 3 tours in Iraq, and you were over in Germany for a while?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a long, god-awful couple of 28 years.
How many? 28?
28 years, yes.
Man, you should be a general now. Oh, wait, black. Never mind. I am so sorry. What the hell was I thinking with my dumbass? I mean, if you're like, what was his name? If you're high yellow like Colin Powell, I think you probably get further.
Well, Colin Powell, I got to meet him in Iraq. He's very intelligent man. Very intelligent man. He's amazing. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
one is. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, I was just saying that I met him over there. He's really intelligent. He's well spoken, And like I say, even though he was a Republican, he's traveling with those guys. I was like, well, he's a great guy. I mean, I just don't like Republicans, so that's the way that's rolling.
Well, I mean, they don't really bring anything to the table. We've had a whole generation to show us that their ideas don't do anything for the majority of Americans, and that's really sad, because back before then, I mean, I grew up in, and I still claim to be a member of the neighborhood where Barack Obama lives in Chicago, in Hyde Park. Oh. And Hyde Park is, that neighborhood is a super charged, politically smart neighborhood. It's also got the University of Chicago. And one of our best aldermen, you would think that in Hyde Park and all that, if nothing but Democrat, but one of our best aldermen, Leon Dupre, was a Republican. But he was a Goldwater Republican, a Republican who believed in smaller government, who believed in, if you're gay, so what? If you have an abortion, so what? These are issues that you deal with yourself, instead of intruding government into your life in a really, really unpleasant, dehumanizing way. So the bad part about Colin Powell is he could never run for president. And the reason why he couldn't run for president was because he was the architect of the cover-up of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Not a lot of people know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the person that the Army assigned to go and straighten things out and quiet things down, and kind of, he was the architect of the cover-up. So had that come out, that would have been problematic for him. But in his own defense, in the service, you do what you're ordered to do.
You do what you're told. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, you're kicking around for 28 years. That's a lifetime, man, in military service.
Well, now, go ahead.
Yeah. No, please.
Well, when I joined, I married my high school sweetheart, so, you've got that, and plus, you're having kids, and, you're doing what basically, guys do, you have a family, picket fence, but it just so happens that we're traveling around the country,
Right. And were you married while you were in the service?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And how was that? I mean, was it?
Well, that sucked. No. I loved my wife and I loved my ex-wife. I mean, we're still really good friends. But it's just like anything else in life. Out of high school, and here's the thing about when you marry your high school sweetheart, everybody says, "Oh, how sweet." Here's the thing about marrying your high school sweetheart. You're a different person in high school. In high school, I was happy-go-lucky, kind of irresponsible. I had my mom, Mom, can I have some money? You're not really a responsible person in high school. You're a high school kid. And, as you get out of high school, you become an adult. You learn responsibility in your moods or you change. So, and my ex-wife said this to me. She said, you've changed. You're not, like you used to be. You used to be a lot of fun. And I'm like, that was in high school. That was in 1982. It's 2013. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, so, I mean, that's the downside of it. But I think I got divorced after my third tour in Iraq. That was just, things have to happen, But I understand what you were saying. When you have somebody who's always standing over you saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. Well, yeah, you drew in high school, but, you can't work for Marvel. I mean, Marvel's the big guys, and, if you have somebody like that constantly in your life saying, you can't, it keeps you from doing a lot.
It is tough when someone is undermining like that. But, I mean, okay, so you got 28, let's call it 3 decades in the armed forces.
Yes.
While you were doing that, what parts of your creativity were you feeding during your tour?
All sections of it. I wasn't the whole time I was in. Like I say, when I draw and I write when I'm upset or sad or or trying to reason something out. For instance, being stationed in Iraq. We were stationed in Iraq for 14 months. All right, 14 months in a war zone is just hellish. So to kind of, to relieve the pressure, you write, you draw, So I'm going to do my first animation feature, on paper, in script form. So you start doing that, and you working on your novels and stuff like that. That's stuff that keeps you sane through those dark times.
Sure.
And it got me, and I'm thankful for it. I mean, Cahaba County got me through my divorce, Desert Storm, stuff like that. So, you still work on your stuff during all this time. You have your first daughter. You say, I'm going to write a comic about that. I don't know if you know, but Cahaba County is basically my life, the things that I do in my life. So whenever something happens, I basically try to put it in script form.
Yeah, I mean, and for those people who want to take a look at some of your work, do you think Indie Planet is still the best place to take a look at your stuff, or do you have
Roger?
Okay, then
that's the best place. Or you could go on my Facebook. I mean, my Facebook is open to pretty much anybody. I'll let anybody on that thing. And you can see all my new stuff on. I have a Facebook also. It's Hobb Comics, and I put the
all one
web
word
link up.
all one word HOBB Comics.
I also have a website. Let me put that up also. It's www.ahobby.com.
Okay.
And that's it's pretty easy to remember. And you can go there. You can see and please buy more comics.
Nothing wrong with that. And for those people who want to would like a little idea about what he does and don't go to the links right away, the stuff is pretty hilarious. But it's all grounded in reality. It's grounded in the kinds of things that you go through, your kids go through, and it is family friendly. So
yes,
that's that's always a plus.
Well,
okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. The Cahaba County is always family friendly because my kids were reading it, and I was saying, okay, I want to make keep this clean. But I also do a comic called G.I. Bean, and I just posted a link there, and it's not so family friendly. So basically, and as a writer, you're going to come up with things that that irk you, that you want to say, hey, listen, this ticks me off, and I want to make a statement about it. But don't let your kids read it because it's a little over the top.
Although then we come to find out that our kids are saying and doing, or at least saying things much worse than we.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you at least keep up your skills. You have a running creative streak while you're in the service. What happened when you got kicked out? When you kicked yourself loose from the armed forces?
Well, I retired in 2012. So I'm now out of the Army and I'm retired, and I'm like, okay, so what do you do? Now, me thinking, I used to work for Walmart, so I'll go back to work for Walmart. I mean, I did that, in the early days, so I'll go back. I found out that Walmart is not Walmart anymore. It's not the Walmart I remember. It's complete.
You mean the Walmart that sold nothing but stuff made in America? No, that Walmart is gone. Not only that, but in I think it was 2006. Republicans passed a law having to do with the tax code that just benefited the Walton family and saved them about $600 million in taxes a year. Just one law
wouldn't doubt it.
For one family.
I would not doubt that.
And here these people have every single part except for the retail of their entire empire is benefiting people overseas, and nobody cares.
Yes. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, that family, I think it was something on the Facebook the other day that said the young girl from the family, I don't know what her name is, she makes, in 6 months' time, she gets like $1 billion in 6 months' time. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. And,
no kidding. Is she single? I'm sorry, never mind.
Yes.
I just had a thought.
No. She's married now.
Oh, okay.
And guess who she married? I mean, she married the guys that one of the guys from the Lowe's family stores, hardware stores. Yeah. So anywhere you see a Walmart, you're going to see a Lowe's pretty much close to it. And I didn't notice that until a guy told me that. I was like, wow, you're right. There's a Lowe's, there's a Walmart. It boggles the mind.
And so what was there? What was so different about approaching Walmart for a job?
Well, the first time I worked for Walmart, I had my own department. And they had a different work ethic in the store. Now it seems like it's just helter-skelter now. I mean, it's just crazy in the store. And they really don't respect, in my opinion, they don't respect the individual anymore. It's just a big corporate machine, and they don't respect the individual anymore. So it's for me personally, it just wasn't a great place to work. So I said, okay, I can't do this. And then I thought, well, you've always wanted to have your own comic book company. You've always wanted to do comics all day. You've been talking about this since, high school or elementary school? So do it. And I was like, wow. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. What else are you going to do? You just, you take all your money and invest it in, your own comic book company, do your own stories, do your own novels, do your own children's books.
So you jump right in.
Yes.
And with both feet, the other thing about Walmart that people probably don't know is when you become an employee of Walmart, they take out a $100,000 life insurance policy on you, and make themselves they make themselves the beneficiary.
Wow.
A lot of people. Yeah. So like if you're standing under one of those big shelves and something falls and kills you, they lose an employee, but they get $100,000. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just a horrible company.
But you know what?
That's in so many ways.
That's been going on. I don't know if you noticed. You've been around a while. In the old housing projects, they used to do that. You have like 5 kids, and you have an insurance policy on each one of those kids. And the kid would die, but the family would all of a sudden come into a lot of money. And I don't know if you've seen that. And the policy man used to be like a frequent flyer around the housing project. Anybody else white comes into the housing project, they would just kill that person. But the policy man from Mutual Omaha or wherever, he just waltzed right past all the gangs, and he walks over the broken glass and all the barbed wire, and he goes from door to door, and they were happy to see him. Like, who is this guy?
Well, the reason why was because those very inexpensive policies, they essentially, parents purchased those in the event that one of their children died, and it would pay for their burial expenses. And maybe give them a little bit more left over. I mean, that's the sad tragedy of the industry. Yes.
And you know what? Some of those parents actually, and I know this from experience, some of those children disappeared, not, for, being damaged or, you know what I'm talking about. And it was a very sad thing, and I'm like, and I used to see it, and I'm like, well, where's, this person? Because, as a child, you only know faces and people and things that children do. And all of a sudden that child is missing, and you're like, well, what happened? So, yeah, I think that was another thing that was really horrible about the housing project that I grew up in.
Yeah. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. This is the January 24th edition, 2014, and we are talking to Hobbie, basically an artist and a writer, and he does a whole series of comic books, Cahoba County comic books. And how many do you have out? What do you have out? About a half a dozen now?
Right now, there's 7 out. I'm now doing my novel, as you know. I'm doing also a children's book. So I'm trying to make sure those things are available before, Christmas 2014.
Wow.
So, yeah. I mean, I like you said, I jumped in this thing with both feet, and my goal is to make sure everything that I publish is quality. I mean, I know it's indie, type stuff, but I see a lot of indie stuff that's not really, up to par, and I'm thinking, well, they could have done this, they could have done that. But, I guess if you're going to be an independent writer or a comic producer or anything like that, you need to bring it, You need to, every letter needs to be, at the proper angle, and all the balloons need to be properly. And then you need to find a great printer that's going to print your material. All that work that I see some of these books, that all that work that goes into it, and all of a sudden there's a page that, that's half this and half that, and I'm like, wow, I know he saw that.
Yeah, but I mean, there are varying degrees of, I guess we could just generically call it quality, and they're based upon a number of things. A lot of people just want to get the story out there, or some people,
yes,
they may be a little lazy and not as much of a perfectionist as maybe you might be.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is that one would hope that if someone's involved in a creative endeavor, that it would be important enough to them to put the best face forward that they possibly could.
Yes, you would think.
And we find out that that's not necessarily so. And, it's not any one group of people, any one demographic for whom that is the biggest, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a work ethic. And I think that in large part, creatives have a different way of thinking about their work and thinking about what's important, and maybe I don't want to call it a value system, because our values are much more similar than they are different, no matter who you are.
Yes.
But you can tell from your work that you put a lot of time and effort into making sure that it shows well.
Yes.
And
yes.
And that's to your benefit. And which makes me want to ask, how well received is your work? What's the kind of the distribution that you have? The kinds of sales that you see, the kind of attention you get. How does the public react to your work?
So far, the reaction's been great. I put out Cahoba County first, and everybody, they can see what's going on. I try to always, give them an introduction of what they're going to see, and then, that way when they can read it. Cahoba County took off pretty well. When I first put it on indieplanet.com, and it started selling pretty well. And I said, okay, I've done the comedy. Let me do sci-fi. So I had this novel that I wrote. I've been working on for years, and it was called Tori, and it was sci-fi. So I said, okay, let's see what I can do with sci-fi, because, like I say, Cahoba County, great, everybody, oh, that's really funny, but can you do sci-fi? So I put Tori out there. Now, what happened was, and it's a good idea that, or it's good that you said that earlier, you have to stick to it. When I first started with Tori, I got this really, really expensive artist. He was really expensive, but he was good. I mean, I was in. I said, okay, if you're going to do this, do it right. Don't get, an artist that's kind of semi-good. Get a great artist. And he was great. And he was expensive. So I said, hey, guy, I don't care how expensive he is. If you can do the job, and let's do it. He says, yeah, I can do the job. And Tori, the pages, it was just awesome. You can look at them on the the internet. They look great. But, like I say, $5,000 in, I was like, okay, we're halfway through the book, and I'm up to $5,000. I was like, okay, so either you're going to finish the book or you're going to get another artist, in which you can't do that. You can't do that midstream. So, yeah, I'd say, hey, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet on this one and just finish the book and pay this guy his money. And I did. But that's, that's me, and, that's me willing to go the extra distance. But everybody loved Tori. They looked at it and it's like, wow, this is crazy. But now, one of the reasons, one of the factors in Tori was I had two issues that I put out. Okay, issue 1 was not ready, and issue 2 was ready. Because I used a different artist on the other issue. So I went ahead and produced issue 2. I said, okay, let's go ahead and put it out. And because it's a novel, and they'll see what it's all about once they see the stories and how the story is set up. So I went ahead and put out issue 2. Issue 1 will be out in February. So that was a kind of a drawback, but I think it works. So far, everybody's been saying, hey, we love this. This is great work.
Well, could you? And I'm just saying this as another writer. Could you have done it in the way of either a prequel or a series of flashbacks or something like that, where you didn't have it so glaringly out of step? You know what I mean?
Well, here's how the setup was. Like I say, it was originally a novel, and what in the beginning of the book, and you may understand this. I mean, you're a writer. Basically, I was setting the table. You're saying, okay, right here, this is Tori. She's just returning from the war. Her father's dead. He owns a shipping company. Her father's dead. Her brother's running the shipping company by himself. So Tori arrives home, and she says, hey, I'll help out. Okay? On the other side of the galaxy, here's the royal family. The royal families, they're worried about this, they're worried about that, and they want to maintain control. The war's now over. They want to maintain control and control the galaxy. Okay? So now you have two things on the table. Now, here's a third part. In a deep sector of space, there's this crazy, maniacal witch, and she's been imprisoned in the prison by her father because she is the way she is, and she wants out. Her only ticket out is Tori. So, and that's how I set it up. That's book 1 and 2. So you can read 2 without without messing up your flow for 1, but
right.
They're both
it's not like
now.
You're completely lost. Yeah, you start with 2, you're not lost. Yeah.
Exactly. So I basically set the table, and then in issue 3, the story starts. You go back to Tori and you say, okay, here's what happened. So,
and so, okay, you've got the comic books out of the novel. I'm sorry, is the novel done and is it available?
No. The novel, like I said, it's gonna take me a year to actually put all my notes together. I wrote the novel over like 5 years. And every time, when you're in the military, that takes, precedence for everything, military, family. So you only get these short, brief times to write. So when I wrote, I just said, okay, I'll put this off to the side. One of these days I'll make this novel. But when I started Hobb Comics, I was like, well, wait a minute. And I think we've talked about this before. I used to be I used to read Stephen King, Anne Rice, all the major books when I was growing up. But right now, if you put a book in front of me and it's over, 3 pages, I am not going to read it because I just don't have that kind of time anymore. So I was.
So you're not going to ever read my
say.
books. No, it's okay. No, fine. Just slap me around on my own show.
No.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Seriously, I mean, I'll be honest with you. when people see what, the length of what I write, a lot of times they're pretty daunted.
That's a lot of pages.
Yeah, but it's a fast read. Okay, it's like what they say in Arizona. It's a dry heat. It's a fast read. So, but no, it is true, because right now I'm in the process of finishing like the third installment of a trilogy, and I'm reading almost nothing for pleasure, because I'm like you. I mean, it's exactly like you. I don't have time. I am. I think most creatives, and that's the shame of being a member of a creative community, because you're not going to find other people who will be able to take the time to absorb whatever your work is, because they are about the business of doing their stuff as well.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the thing that I always say is, go into it, go someplace, visit, talk to people, whatever, but have the right set of expectations for where you are and what you're doing and the crowd you're at. So no, I tease you, because with you doing this full time, I can't see how you would have a lot of spare time to be checking out other people's stuff.
None.
But there's also the part where you want to at least have a look around to see what competitive kind of art, and creative things might be out there. But even that, you're still limited. It's not like there's so much out there. So
you can only look in and see it, but you can't get involved in it because you got so much else to do.
Yeah. No, I get that.
But
okay, so
go ahead.
So do you have? I mean, if you spin the novel out and get the novel out, I mean, how much more work do you think it'll be? Because I would think that having kind of like the same storyline in both novel format and comic format would help the synergy, to make people cross over from one to the other.
Yes, it does, and that's why I did it that way. They can look at the comic book and says, okay, this is a good story. I like where this is going, and it's kind of like a teaser, and that way when the novel comes out, they'll say, okay, I want to know the full story. I want to know where this is going, because the comic books only set it up, and the comic books do what comic books do. They tease. And they say, stay tuned for this, and then you have to go to the next one, and then stay tuned for that one, and you keep going from comic book to comic book. But I figured, hey, do about 3 comic books, show them the story, show them the characters, and then they'll decide if they want to read it or not. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking to Jarvis, and we were talking about The Princess Bride. Remember that?
Yes.
And Jarvis said something that 100 people that have said to me. He says, dude, I don't want to watch something that's called The Princess Bride. and his family, I think it was his wife or his family made him watch it that night, didn't they? Exactly, yeah. But he was right. It was called The Princess Bride, and that's what stuck in his brain. He started thinking Barbie Funhouse or Barbie and Ken or The Three Little Pigs or something like that. And, yeah. And I was the same way. When I heard it, they said, Al, you've got to see this movie. And I was like, what's the name of the movie? The Princess Bride. I said, oh, no, I'm sorry. That ain't going to work. You were on drugs at the time, and now you want me to watch some movie that has a princess in it. But it is an awesome movie.
Yeah, it is. Well, and the thing is it's one of those perfect movies. Not perfect in everything is absolutely right, but it's a perfect movie that can be appreciated on so many different levels. I mean, if you're a small kid, even a 4-year-old child is going to enjoy the story. Meanwhile, adults are getting, some of the humorous subtext that the kids aren't going to get. and then the other thing that I like about what Rob Reiner did with that was he chose actors for the roles that adults felt like they were in on the joke. They were in on behind the scenes. So yes, it worked on a lot of different levels. But you're absolutely right. If you take it on its on its face, oh, the Princess Bride, it's about a love story, it's for kids, it's this, it's that, and never know about it. But I mean, I don't think, it sounds to me like your whole Tory series, and it also sounds like that's going to lend itself well to if someone ever picks it up to animate, to turn it into.
Oh my God! Yes. That's I'm writing that also.
Yeah. So I mean, that's great to have all of that synergy between different mediums, because what you're doing is you're creating you're taking your creative universe and you're making it accessible to people who like different types of entertainment.
Exactly.
And that's just smart creativity.
Yes.
I can't wait to see, to read the novel. I hopefully, it looks like next year I'll be able to start reading again. I used to read maybe 2 or 3 books a week, and I haven't done that. I like to do it, and when you live alone, if
you're one of those people that can sit off by themselves, I used to be that person. I could sit off by myself and start reading a little Anne Rice, and then Stephen King will come out with something, and I'll say, okay, let me check this out. Everybody's talking about it, and you'll sit there, and it'll grip you, and you'll sit there for weeks. And read it, you'll carry it with you. Actually, the book bag, remember when that became in? It was the book bag. Everybody had a book bag and said Barnes and Nobles, and it was the in thing. But now, I can't even imagine trying to read anything. I mean, everything's thrown at you now.
Yeah, plus, the economy being what it is, it's hard as hell to find spare time.
Yes.
You look at anybody with a family, and they're trying to make enough money to feed them, clothe them, to raise their kids, to give them a respectable and a respectable standard of living.
Yeah.
That's not easy. That's not all easy to accomplish when you have to work 2 jobs or 3 jobs. So. Yeah, I will admit that reading is a luxury, and in some ways, I look back and go, instead of becoming an author, you could have become a hacker and done bad things instead of being an IT guy doing good things. But
hackers make good money.
It is. Yeah. Okay, so you've got these 2 comic lines going. You've got Cahoba and you've got
Cobb County. You've got Tory and GI Bean. And
wait, what's that one? What's that one about?
Now GI Bean, remember I said is not for children. It's kind of.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's kind of a little more adult. Yeah.
Yes, and I have another title that's called Little Al, and that's really taken off. I started selling this. I think the first time I had it on the internet, I sold like 100 copies that first week, and I was telling them, I was like, wow, man, I didn't think, does this happen all the time? They're like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, well, okay, well, maybe people like it. So I threw in the Little Al series, because Little Al is me when I was a child growing up in the housing projects. So. And a lot of ridiculous stuff happens in housing projects that it's really funny. It's not funny at the time, but if you look back at it, it's like, wow, that was just so funny. I did the comic last week where my brother, he was this big kind of, neighborhood thug. In my family, we all have different fathers. So,
right.
We're all built differently. My father is more of a bookworm, so I came out of no muscles, kind of nerdy, got a little small, hangover nose, and but my brother, his dad is like King Kong. I mean, the guy, the first time I saw him, I thought he was like the guy couldn't even get through the door. I'm like, wow, this is a big guy. And I don't even know why my mother was attracted to him, but who knows, So my brother, he basically turned out to be this big monkey, and his knuckles drag the ground when he walks. And
I'm sure he appreciates all that description you're throwing out there about him. Okay.
Well, he's my brother, and I love him, but I mean, I have to put him down all the time. So,
okay.
But anyway, he's this big brute, and he's like, hey, don't read your comic books outside the house. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, don't go outside and read your comic books because they'll see that and they'll know that you're a thinker and you're one of those wusses, And I say wuss, but it was in those days it was FAG.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, he says, don't do that, And I disobey him. I'd go out there to my friend Donald's house and say, hey, look, Captain America's doing this. And he's got a new partner named Falcon, and we're sitting there and, you get more kids in there. And then you get the really bad kids from the neighborhood. They'll come up like, what's going on here? And it's like, man, this guy's reading a comic book, And the guy who's holding up thing can't even read, but he's like, and here comes my brother, and he's like, man, what did I tell you? Don't do that, So I wrote a comic about that a couple of weeks back. So.
And so that series has taken off.
Oh, yeah.
And I could see why if you're a pretty creative writer, and that's what comes through. A lot of people may not see that as it is, but to be able to tell a story in a few panels and have it resonate, that is high art. That is the essence of comic book art.
Oh yeah.
And that's why you shot 100 copies out in a month. I mean, obviously the quality was there, the storytelling was there, and then you are kind of I was going to use the anal word, but you're a high perfectionist about your art. About the
anal is a good word.
Well, yeah, but I mean, people.
My ex-wife uses it all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, but when I look at your finished product, it is indistinguishable from what we would consider very popular, very successful mainstream artwork in other comics. And that's I think that is a good testament to how you treat your art.
Well, I hope it's that's a good thing, being because I grew up with the same comics you grew up with, Hagar the Horrible, Blondie, Dagwood.
Yeah. And then you look at some of the simplicity. I think probably one of the simplest but obviously most successful comic strips, and then obviously it branched out, was look at the drawing of Charles M. Schultz, the Peanuts stuff.
Yes.
I mean that there in order for that to work, people don't realize that it's not so much the panels that he drew, but it was the way he could convey a story.
Yes.
In such a short number of panels.
Yes. He was awesome.
Yeah, he was. And minimalist art is not easy. Some people go, oh, it's just simple. They're not putting in the time or the effort, or nobody's really working hard or anything like that. But minimalist art, in my opinion, is much harder to achieve successfully than, and I think we're finding the same thing in movies now.
Really?
Right now, well, look at what's attracting, lots of viewers. You're getting, I made this observation. Pacific Rim was the loudest movie I had ever been to in my life. I'm serious. I was in the theater and I came out and it's like my ears were like, oh man, this is ridiculous.
Yes,
but
it was.
And people, more and more people are drawn to destruction porn because there's a lot of action and they have to engage absolutely no cognition in order to appreciate it. And unfortunately, that doesn't bode well for the kind of art that you do. That doesn't bode well for good comics, because good comics, even though you're supplying the visuals, still relies on the imagination of the person reading it to carry the story through, to think about implications, to try to guess what's going to happen next. Because if it's a serial comic, You
yes.
get so many pages. You get so many pages, and then
to do that,
there's a mini cliffhanger at the end, and you have to wait a month or however long until the next edition comes out in order to see what the resolution is.
Yeah. There's this one comic guy, and I don't know who had said it, but he said exactly what you were saying a long time ago, and I remember it. He says, no, what you're doing with comics, you've got to draw an image in their minds, but you're using your panels to draw that image. And he says you're going to have to use their brains to draw the image between the panels, because you've only got a set number of panels to work with. So the space in between those panels, you have to put that in their minds. And I was like, wow, this guy's out there, man. But it was a good lesson, though.
So do you have much dialogue with your fans? Yes.
On my Facebook page, everybody, believe me, everybody writes me and starts, telling me about this and that, and I love it because that's how I can get feedback on my work. I have Facebook has these clubs and these groups, and I think I'm a member of almost 100 groups. So
right.
when I post something, I have to post to 100 groups. It takes me over like an hour to do that. So, but they enjoy it, and they'll write me back and they'll say, "Hey, Al, I like this," or "This happened, to me," and stuff like that. And I like that. I mean, I like when people appreciate my work because, like I said in the beginning, Cobb County was, it was something that's personal to me. When I was going through my divorce, and the judge pointed at me and says, "You're going to pay, $600 a month child support." And I went into a roar. I was like, no, I'm not going to pay, $600. I'm the best thing my kids can have. I think I should have my kids. So, it's either that or go to jail. I put that in my comics. So, Al's sitting there, and he's got all these police around. And the funny, and I wish I had the link to it, but here's the gist of the comic was, I'm standing right between two huge guards. All right, I'm this scrawny little nerdy, black guy, but they got two guards to watch me. I mean, that makes no sense. I'm like, one of those guards could have just put me in the palm of his hand and held me up in front of the judge. But no, there was two guards there to guard me, and he was sitting there telling me how much I was going to pay, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay anything. And then the guard, he does this and that, and I said, oh, I can pay that.
Yeah.
So, and that's, Cobb County is for me, but I enjoy when other people say, hey, I went through that. That was great. I like this comic. So it's kind of like, a drug now. I can't stop.
Well, and the thing is, the popularity is based upon the fact that the scenarios that you include and the way you handle the material you handle has a rather universal appeal. I would imagine that obviously you have a black audience for it, but it's just as relevant and probably just as entertaining to whites who are exposed to it or anybody else. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I mean,
that's good. Yeah, that's good too, because what you're doing is you're not pigeonholing yourself either.
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got the novel in the works. You've got you've got these 3 comics. Let's go ahead. Let's talk a little bit about the non-children friendly series that you've done. What was the basis for you putting that together? G.I.
Bean came to me when I was in the Army. And, when you're in the Army, you write stuff. I write, Saddam Hussein jokes and stuff like that. And it was basically, just, stuff that, you don't want kids to know about, when I was in Iraq when they were talking about his beheading. And
right.
I wrote a bunch of jokes about his beheading, and you really don't want your kids, knowing about, stuff like that. So, and a couple of months ago, I wrote something about Marvel's new all-black Avengers. And even my artist at that time, Alex, he said, hey, this is a little kind of over the top, you know, you might offend somebody. And I said, hey, that's what I'm going at. And so, you know, I that's a title that's pretty much, you know, it's not for the kids. It's not really risque or really bad, but it may offend a couple of people. Like, you know, I may say a Bible joke, you know, and there may be somebody who's in the audience who's religious. They may not appreciate it. So, stuff like that.
Yeah. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. The show airs live every Friday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, and it's the same across the dial for even those. We even have people, I guess, who tune in every now and then from the African continent. Which, I mean, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty cool to me that this has that kind of scope.
Yes.
And we're wait. Let me tell them who you are. And you're listening to Al Hobbie, who is so anxious to talk, he doesn't give a damn whether you know who he is or not.
No, what I wanted to say was, you said earlier, you know, do I get a lot of response back? And I'm on all these pages on Facebook, and I've got guys from Kenya, guys from what is that place? Korea, and I can't think of the name, but I know it's in Korea. And people, a while back, they had just got hit by a monsoon or something. And this guy was telling me about the monsoon and everything, and he's saying, oh, well, you know, I like your comment. I like the one you did last week. I said, well, how are you getting to this if, you know, you guys just got hit by a monsoon? He said, well, there's an internet bank here. And I was like, wow, man, this guy's taking time out to come to go to the internet bank, to surf the internet, and he's saying, hey, Al, you know, I love that what you did last week. And I was like, wow, that's pretty, you know, that's awesome. You know, I mean, you know, at least he likes it, you know.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. Oh, see, Kenya is listening now. I'm looking in the chat room. So, I mean, but the cool thing is that if you do something well creatively, it's going to transcend boundaries. And the other part of the thing about transcending boundaries is that if you have a broader appeal, it works out to your benefit. You know, there are some people who go, oh, no, I'm just going to write for this narrow segment and stuff like that. And I wonder, you know, well, if that doesn't work out, how are you going to be financially successful? And that's, you know, we all want, you know, as creatives, obviously we want to have, you know, certain kinds of accolades about our art, because what it does is it substantiates our creativity and it substantiates our worth as a creative. And so when you get those kind of accolades, not only is it kind of like an attaboy, but I think that it fuels the creativity and the push to do more, and maybe even, you know, if you're really good, to do better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's when people say, "Hey, Al, I like this," blah blah blah, it just fuels me up. And I was like, "You like that? You're gonna love this," you know. I mean, there are people who go ahead.
Someone's asking for a link in the chat room to your GI thingy.
Oh, it should be at the same website. I'll just send the website, and that way you can.
Okay, cool. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I say, somebody a while back said, you know, Tori's pretty good. You know, this is somebody who's read both, you know, copies, because I sent them the number one, and they said, you know, I said, well, if you like Tori, you know, you're gonna love Hidden Agenda, because Hidden Agenda was one of the first stories I wrote, and I thought it was kind of outdated, and I was like, well, you know, nobody's gonna read this, nobody's gonna want to read this, because it, you know, deals with a lot of racism and stuff like that. You know, but, you know, and it's based in Alabama, you know, the year, you know, 2065, and Alabama is still doing what Alabama does best, you know, there's you know, racism, you know.
Right,
so it was a really good story, but, you know, like I say, when you get stories that deal with racism, you know, it tends to rub other people the wrong way, so I trashed it, you know, and then I came up with the story Tori, and I was like, okay, this is middle of the road, is Star Wars. I think this will appeal to a broader audience.
Right. And that's the thing that I think makes, I mean, for me, when I started writing, about blacks living on the moon, I knew that there was that racial component in it, but what I was shooting for was a broader appeal speculative fiction story, so that it wasn't, in a lot of ways, it worried me that I may be pigeonholed as merely a black science fiction writer.
Yes, yes.
And I will be the first one to admit that the idea was troublesome, because I knew that it would be limiting in terms of
audience.
Audience, because people would probably not even take a look if it were characterized in a certain way. So,
yes.
I mean, that broad appeal is a big thing. Broad appeal is a good thing, because I think one of the things that let's take music. Obviously, urban music pretty much rules. It dominates the world's culture right now. But it wouldn't do that if it didn't appeal to. I mean, look how crazy the different Asian populations are for rap.
Yes.
That
it is funny.
That whole stereotypical little tiny two Japanese girls doing that back and forth rap in a real high voice, which
it's crazy.
Making your dog, but they're so into it, and so
well, you can't tear yourself away from looking at it when you see it.
Well, yeah, but a car accident is like that too. Dead people on the road, but broad appeal is a huge thing, and one of the things that I always advise people, who want to do something creative, if they call me, they talk to me, other black creatives, I say, well, obviously work on what it is that you're doing to make it as good as it can possibly be, and then, hopefully you can create something that has a more universal appeal, so that it's not pigeonholed.
Well, when I first did Cobb County, and I remember some guy was saying this, I think it was in 2000, and I was, because 2000 is when everybody had their own webcomic, and it's like,
sure.
Web, and so I had it out there, and, naturally, I'm going to go over to, a lot of what the black comics are, because I think, okay, this is, I have a lot of black people in my comic and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay. And I think this is when Dwayne McDuffie he was with Ghetto Sake Comics. And there was a lot of web comics jumping out there. And then I went into this one place, and this guy says, hey, why are there white people in your comic? And then, I'm like, okay, he doesn't understand. He's trying to come from the hood angle, because that's what his comic was about. And
right.
I says, well, my comic is about the housing project, but in my housing project, there were white people. I mean,
right.
we weren't all blacks, there were Jewish poor, and, there were Italian poor. And he was like, yeah, but you don't really need to put them up front. You need to put them, somewhere in the back. And I was like, wow, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a certain politics, that people maintain about people who, people of color who do creative things.
Yes.
I'm pretty lucky that I escape a lot of that, and I did that by making sure that I had, when I was picking out parents, I picked out a Japanese father, so that there would be, I could get a pass on certain things by being biracial. But the thing is you're right. There are people who will castigate you or criticize you if you don't do what they believe is the politically correct thing to do, and that's always tough, because you don't want to disappoint anybody. But then on the other hand, when people are trying to impose their expectations on your creativity, that's a tough road to hoe, because nobody wants to tell anybody, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. This is mine.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to turn anybody off or turn anybody down. But the thing is when you are invested in your creativity to that extent, that's a pretty big deal, to have somebody come and tell you, well, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
You're not doing it right because you're darker than Harry Belafonte, so it has to be us.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. So but it does sound like you deal with it well, and if people didn't get into revisionist history, actually almost all of these housing projects, especially the ones put up at post World War II, were almost completely white at the beginning. There were, like you said, Italian immigrants and German immigrants and all these European immigrants that flooded to this country, and they started out in those housing projects, and then it eventually changed into something else. But it's very cool that in yours you still had that racial mix, because it would seem to me that affords you far more possibilities for storyline and humor, because you can always employ the fish out of water syndrome, or the competing cultures, or whatever. So I think that's a wise, creative choice on your part to be inclusive.
Yeah, and like I said, you're always trying to get a bigger audience. You don't want to turn off anybody. When the guy told me that, I was like, hey, you got to understand, they were in my neighborhood, and he was like, well, I don't want to hear that. I have an uncle that, and like I say, I'm from Alabama, and, there's a lot of racism down there. Yeah, and you're going to have families, full of racists, and I have uncles that, don't like this and don't like that, and, they try to poison you as you grow up. But if you're really smart, if you're one of the smart ones, you realize, that racism is just not the way to go. And I realized this guy was kind of like my uncle. He was like, oh, I don't want to see white. I don't want to, I want to be white. I don't want to, I don't even want to buy Clorox at the store. So he's like, okay, so, you recognize it, and you say, okay, I'll leave this guy alone, and I'll just kind of hang back a little bit,
Right. The kind of guy who won't wear white socks with his sneakers.
Yeah, I don't want to wear white.
Yeah. And I've kind of, it's a little different for me because, Japanese culture is quite a bit different than urban, black culture. But my uncle on my mother's side, no, not my uncle, my 4 times great uncle on my mother's side was in the Revolutionary War, and he was the person who said, "Don't fire till you see the whites," which got messed up. Which got messed up in translation with the. No, I'm just kidding. I am lying my.
You had me on that one. I was like, wow.
Thank you. No, it was a lie. But now let's talk about. You talk about the fact that you've got, you do have an ex-wife, but you probably have people in your circle of friends and family that have taken a look at what you do. What kind of response do you get from them? I know you've got a couple of kids. How do they look at, what do they think of what Dad is producing?
Well, the youngest always thinks, oh, Dad, that's really cool. That's why I did the Tory. I said, I've been writing that Tory story. He said, Dad, you've been writing that same story forever, and you've been explaining it to us. We don't want to see you explain it to us anymore, because I guess they're tired of it. So I said, okay, I'm going to put it in a comic book. And, I sent him the Tory issue number 2, and he's like, Dad, that's pretty cool. And I was like, yeah, your dad's pretty cool here. He's like, yeah, right, Dad. So, you're always trying to impress your kids, but you can't do it because you're the parent. You'll never be cool.
Yeah, but look at you. You got. That's pretty cool. That's great. And now that you've got a broad age demographic checking you out and liking your stuff. Do you hear from parents who appreciate the fact that
it's not filthy?
The whole the Cahoba County stuff is very, very family friendly, and it's genuinely funny. It's rooted in the humor of life. And do you get a good response from parents for that?
Well, Cahoba County, I get a great response from that. But little Al just took off. I was like, like I said, I sold that 100 copies, and I was like, hey, is this normal? And the guy says, no, that's not normal. Normally they don't do that, man. And then I put in the the little owl, and it just took off. It started. Let's see, I think over a month, I sold about 300 copies, and I was like, okay, so I guess because Little Owl. I grew up on Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts, and stuff like that. So basically, that's kind of what it is. So I was like, okay, so they like this. So, but like I say, to answer your question, I haven't had any parents come up and say, hey, we like this or we like that. They come up and say, hey, that happened to me, or.
Oh, even better, yeah, because they've got that commonality of experience.
Yes, and for a while I thought I had the Bullwinkle thing going, where I could appeal to the kids and appeal to the parents. But, I was like, well, I can't try to, and you're right, sometimes, like we were talking about The Princess Bride, it appeals to all, ages on down to the kids. That is some heavy writing right there. I mean, you have to be on your game to write where you can appeal to all spectrums.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned Rocky and Bullwinkle. That was one of my favorite shows, and I loved it for Rocky and Bullwinkle. And then later, as an adult, I bought up all the shows on Laserdisc, which tells you how old-fashioned I am. No,
Laserdisc.
but then when I watch them now, it's a whole different level of appreciation because then you get the politics, you get the social commentary that you did not.
Yeah,
you weren't aware of as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever thought about doing a 3-panel comic and seeing if you could get some syndication for it?
Well, now I started in 2012, and now I'm just starting to catch on because it took me 2013 to kind of grind some stuff out. To get my footing.
Sure.
And I've been lucky. I got, people like Joe, McPhee. I said, hey, Joe, how does this work? Because I've been out of the Comic-Cons and things like that for a while. I used to go to a lot of them because I'm a Trekkie. I'm a longtime Trekkie. And I used to go to all the Trek cons and everything and sell my stuff at the tables. But now I've been out, and I asked Joe, I said, hey, could you let me sit in on it, and, that way I can learn some stuff. So it took me pretty much all of 2013 to get my act together. I think this year I'm going to start doing some stuff. I've got people looking at me now. They're saying, hey, could you put this in our magazine, or could you put this in our, our newspaper? And, so I'm like I say, I'm getting there. I'm not there yet. I think enough people have seen my stuff to know that, hey, it's safe, it's fun, it's colorful, and, it's good,
Yeah, but Al, that's great. I mean, stop and think about it. We're not even 1 month done with 2014. You basically, you look at 2012 and 2013 as your building years. That's a pretty short, pretty short span of time for you to start garnering attention. So, I mean, that speaks well of what you produce.
It's for me, and I think it's kind of a bad thing in a way because, like I say, when I sold that 100 copies, and I was like, wow, man, these guys, everybody must be making millions off of these comics. And then I asked this other guy, I says, hey, I just sold 100 copies. He says, there's no way you sold 100. I says, yeah, dude. And I took pictures of it and sent it to him. He says, man. He says, is that your first book? I said, yeah, that's Cobb County. And he says, that's pretty good. And I was like, well, because, I'm coming to this thing from a different angle. I mean, I'm thinking, even in my old days at the Star Trek table, you bring all that stuff in there, you'd probably sell, 5 things in an entire day. So,
right.
I just want to stay grounded is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we were chatting maybe a week or so back. Are you going to try to make it to C2E2 here in Chicago?
Yes. Joe McPhee, he has graciously offered to train me up. I'm going to be at a table with him. I don't know where. All that's up to him. But I'm going to set up a table, and I'll be there, and I'll have Tory issue number 1. You know, so, you know, it'll be $3. You know, it's $4 on the internet, but it'll be $3 there, and I'll be there. So please come over and buy comics and talk. But he's gonna show me everything, how this stuff works.
And then, of course, like I remind everybody else, you know, whatever appearances that you're going to make, whatever cons you're going to go to, conventions you're going to go to, post them up on the events calendar at blacksciencefictionsociety.com, so that, you know, when a weekend comes up and somebody says, oh, you know, what's going on? Oh, look, C2E2 in Chicago. Oh, Al's going to be there. Jarvis is going to be there. William's going to be there. Kim's going to be there. I'm hoping that, no, I'm serious. I'm hoping that we can all get together at one time for 5 minutes so that we could take a BSFS group photo of the people who are at C2E2, because I think that's, I mean, you know, obviously it's great when you have a group that supports you like that, but, you know, a lot of people just getting together, the energy, you know, really helps you. And you know, like I said here, I'm going to actually, if I'm not careful, I'm going to end up having to buy 20 people lunch, because I keep telling them when you come up here, I'll take people lunch. Or maybe I'll just use the excuse that the sheriff wouldn't let me take the ankle bracelet off, and we'll see if that works.
Well, you know, William, that's why I'm here every weekend. When I'm listening to the show, I'm doing storyboards and everything. But you know, I like being here because, you know, you've got people that are trying. They're in the mud. You know, they're down there. They're trying to get their stuff sold, and they're creative, and they're just working really hard at it. And that's where you want to be. You want to be in the mud with these people, saying, okay, that's creative. Well, wait, maybe I can try this, or maybe I can try that. Or like a lot of times you guys say, hey, you know, you don't want to do this because if you do this, this will happen.
Right. And you know what? The thing is that the best people don't have trouble listening to other people help them out, and they don't have trouble. You know, they don't have, you know, they transcend the ego, like, well, it wasn't invented here. Well, I didn't think of it, therefore it has no validity for me.
Yeah.
You know, you look at how hard it is to be successful. And, you know, some things catch on quickly, some things have a slower build, and some things may not catch on at all.
Yeah.
But if you have the support of decent people around you, it makes the entire process a lot better, because, you know, most of those people will have gone through the same thing you did. You know?
Yes, exactly. And knowledge is power. I mean, it just, you know, that thing's been on since Schoolhouse Rock started, and when I first heard it then, I said, knowledge is power. And I was like, you know what, and it still rings true today. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the more capable you can be, and the more you can, you know, not, you know, waste your money. You know, when I first, like I said, I spent $5,000 on Tory #2. I think I could have been a little bit better at that. And like I say, it's a learning curve. And then when I met other creators, and they says, well, no, you do this way. You know, and that's the proper way to do it. And I said, well, that could have saved me like, you know, $200.
Right. Okay, so let's talk the business part of what you do.
Go ahead.
Let's take your creative 24 hours. Okay, out of your creative 24 hours, you probably sleep, you know, 6 to 8 hours, somewhere in there. How much time on your activity clock do you devote to the business part of what you have to do in order to move your projects and your business forward, and how much do you devote to the creative part, and what are the kinds of things that you're looking at from the business part that are, you know, kind of the easy things for you and the hard things for you? I think I asked you about 9 things, so answer whichever one you want to answer.
Well, I'm on a schedule. You know, I mean, I have to be. I mean, you know, if I sat at this table, which in the beginning I tried to do, you would just, you know, you're sitting at a table all day and you're eating donuts and, you know, and you're gaining a lot of weight and you're not, you know. So I'm on a schedule. I make sure that I, you know, 08 in the morning, you know, until 3 a.m. at night, or actually the next day, That's my clock. I think I want to sleep like 5 hours max.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's about right for me too. No, I mean seriously, and let's be honest, we're both older, and it's not, it's different. When you're older, I think that, I mean, like today, I had a rough day today, so I'll probably sleep a little earlier, but my clock gets me up after 5 or 6 hours and says, you should have been up and doing something.
Yeah.
So are you kind of like that too? When you wake up, you know that, oh, I got these things I still have to do, or even being, in some ways, like I'm in full on writing mode now. I'm kind of excited to get back to
the story.
Yeah, I really am.
Yes.
You're like that too?
Yes, I am. I'm right now. I don't know if I told you I'm writing a children's story. My first children's story, and it's got the little Al characters in it, and I'll break off. It's okay. That's enough writing for now. And then I'll go and I'll sit and I'll think and I was like, this is pretty good. That's a good idea. But now I'm writing a Tory novel also, so. When I wake up, I don't know if you get this. When I wake up, I'm excited. I was like, okay, new angle, new way of saying this one sentence, or a new way of doing this, and right. I'm eager to get back to the computer, to just start banging it out,
Yeah. And okay, now let's talk nuts and bolts. When you actually do the physical drawing part, are you do you work analog or digital for the drawing part?
I don't do the drawing. I
Not at all.
Say that.
You don't even do any story panels or anything. You leave that up to somebody else.
I do the storyboards. I'm working with an artist now. His name is Phil Giuliano. He's out of Minnesota. This is how I do it, because, like I said, I used to be a great artist. But then I found out that, bending over a table for hours and hours, that kills my back. I still have back problems. So, I like to write. So I go on the Internet, and one of the great things about, the Internet is you run into some of these great artists. For Tory, I ran into Corey Turnbull, and he was looking for work. And he said, I'm looking for work, if anybody needs anything. And I said, hey, I have an idea here. Boom. I hired him. I put him on the contract. Alex Lugo from California, he's normally, my main artist. And I normally use him. But then, I think about 6 months ago, I was on the Internet, and I was, saying that I had a project. And this guy named Phil Giuliano said, hey, listen, here's my DeviantArt page. Go look at some of my work, and if you like it, give me a call. And I looked at some of his work. I was like, hey, this is what I was thinking about. So what I basically, I hired him, and I said, okay, I'll draw the storyboards, and you just, redraw the storyboards. And that way I get what I want, and there's no redrawing, and, nobody's confused. It's just easier for me to draw the storyboards and let the artist do the hard work. And then I get what I want. Then me just drawing the script and saying, okay, follow the script.
Okay.
That's the you asked about the nuts and bolts of it. That's the way I work it. That it's easier to work it that way than, like I say, you get what you want. When you have a storyboard of a street corner with a fire hydrant on it, he won't draw a dragon, with, fighting a knight. And I'm like, wait a minute, the script says street corner, fire hydrant. You've got a dragon fighting a knight, Yeah. So, I mean, that's the way I do it. I draw the boards, he redraws them, and then he sends them to me, and I say, okay, that looks pretty good. Could you change this right here? And then I send it back to him, and because he's on the contract, he changes it. Now, when he does the final, and I say, okay, I can't go back and say, oh, I don't like that, this won't work, blah, 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 because if I do, in this contract it says, for every rewrite, I have to pay this or that. So that's how I work it.
Yeah, I think the only analog I have is, the artist that did the covers for my novels. I gave them what my concept was, and artists, I'm telling you, the good ones can take your words and turn it into something so spectacular it exceeds your every imagining, and that's what happened that's what happened in the case of both of my novel covers, because these guys, when you're truly good at what you do, I just got asked to help do the text in a graphic novel, and it was based upon my writing skills, and I've never done anything like that, and I'm thinking furiously, how am I going to accomplish that? But the person who put me on it, he said he has absolutely no worries about it at all, because my art as a writer is what he appreciated. And so I look at, these guys who do this great art, and then what they come up with is so fantastic. So, there's a part of me that makes it hard for me to let go of the reins and let somebody just do something, because I am kind of a control freak. And, like I think any
Me
creative,
too.
well, no, I mean, any creative about their own stuff is probably like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, hang on a second. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. The show airs live every Friday night at 9 p.m., sadly, because I have nothing else in my life to do. This is the January 24th, 2014 edition, and we're talking to Al Hobbie. So you don't have, it sounds like you're very comfortable once you choose somebody with the whole collaborative process. Well, and go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, if you go on the internet right now and Facebook and stuff, there are thousands of artists there. I mean, they're all looking for work, and they all have they all have DeviantArt pages. So it's like, a smorgasbord. You walk up and you got all these delicious artists that with different styles and different textures. This guy may ink, this guy may not ink, this guy may, he has a technique that he learned from, his great-great-grandfather, and you're like, wow, look at this. So I think, for anybody, you find out what your script is about, find out what your story is about, and just find an artist who kind of mimics what you see in your dreams. That's what I do.
Yeah. Okay, so let's flash forward a little bit. You have a couple things obviously in the works. Doing some more Little Al, obviously the Tory, and you've got the novel. Let's look 5 years ahead of time. Flash forward. Where do you think you're going to be with those projects, and do you have new ones in mind that you might want to at least tease people with?
Well, as a creator, you've always got your what do they call it, treasure trunk, things you even worked on that you say, that's not going to work. You put it away, but you've got all these things that you like, one of these days when I make it big, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. So I've got all of that. I've got television shows that I've written, Star Trek episodes that I wrote that I said, okay, Star Trek doesn't want to see me. I don't know if you went to my Facebook page. I used to write scripts and send them to Paramount Pictures because, they were really open in the 80s and stuff. They were like, hey, send us in a script and we'll look at it. If we like it, we'll pay you for it. So I did a bunch of those. So I've got a lot of little things. My goal now is to make sure, that I put out quality comics. Now that the comics are done, I want to make sure there's a children's book that, that's great. I want to make sure that novel, lives up to, you are the pro. So it's my job to make sure I meet, either your expectations or it's just barely, below yours. Because, I'm not going to be anywhere near you because, you've been doing this a lot longer, So I've got to put out a novel that's, decent. It's not going to be great because it's my first novel, I have a book that I wrote a long time ago. But I want to put out a decent novel. And my ultimate goal is, to get on Cartoon Network. I would love for Cahaba County to be on Cartoon Network. That would be it lives. I mean, it's a great cartoon. It's very funny. I don't think they'd have anything on television like it. You have the Boondocks that was done a while back.
Right.
That was by Aaron Magruder, and but this Cobb County is not the Boondocks. It doesn't go that it doesn't get that offensive.
Well, and it's a completely different storyline. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The characters are completely different. These are your experiences are probably not going to be, as wildly extreme as the Boondocks. But I mean, when you look at the popularity of your Little Al series, there's potential. I mean, stop and think about it. What if 30 years from now, people are sitting down at Thanksgiving and they're watching, or in October, and they watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown,
yeah,
and
that's what I was going for, William.
From Little Al,
that's what I was going for. I wrote the script like a year ago, and I keep pitching it, and I say, hey, this is going to be a Christmas special, Little Al and stuff like that. I want it to be. And there's a bunch of independent companies around that I can pitch it to. Like I say, that was my goal. That Christmas special, we used to love that as children.
And just between you and me, I have a script for a movie, a full feature that I'm going to do, which is an urban adaptation of like a Christmas Carol. And
really,
and
the one with Jimmy Stewart?
No, well, no. Let's see. The original one had the Bob Cratchit Ghosts of Christmas.
You mean that one? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But
wow.
And I'll tell you how financially slutty I am. The reason why I'm going to do that is because it's low-hanging fruit. If we execute it well, then it's going to be shown every Christmas, and I get residuals till I die.
Yes.
And that's the other thing about the business of doing business. You want to do things that are going to be financially profitable and give you the freedom to continue to do the kind of creative things that you want to do, even the things that may be, what I guess if we were going to back in the 60s would be called avant-garde. Okay, so you've got things that are new that haven't been seen before that are a little bit out there, but you don't make that your bread and butter because that may not be financially feasible, and yet the other things are paying your bills so that you can still do the creative things that are not so mainstream.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then, what have you considered? What if Disney comes and says, we like that Little Al thing, and we're wondering what it would take for you to part with that. How do you feel about how proprietary are you about your creativity? I mean,
everybody would like that, to happen to them, but I don't know. If Disney came up to me and said, we'd give you what $3 million for it, I'd be willing to part with it, because I'm like George Lucas. You want whatever you create to go on, and you want somebody to handle it that, has a reputation of, taking it to higher and higher, levels. And Disney is the company to do that. I see why George Lucas sold that. But any other company like the Boondocks, the Boondocks was sold to Sony. I think Mr. Magruder sold it to Sony after a while. So, I mean, if Disney came up to me, I wouldn't have a problem with Disney. But any other company like Warner Brothers, I don't know. They or Paramount, they tend to just pull things apart, as it gets more popular,
So you're careful with you're going to be careful with your intellectual property because you don't want to see it sullied and you don't want to see it ruined.
Exactly. I mean, Hobbie County and Little Al is supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to, it's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to, and I'm not putting down the Boondocks. I mean, I think that guy's great. But, I mean, I cannot watch it. I mean, I just literally can't watch that program because it starts going into the, these dark corners, And I'm like, hey, it's a cartoon. It's not supposed to go into a dark corner. It's supposed to make you happy. It's supposed to make you think, oh, I did that. Or, maybe, it can be a better world or stuff like that. You don't want to keep going down those dark corners because now I don't even see the point of it, I mean, it's supposed to make you laugh and be happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the defense of people who do things that you and I would not read, I would have to say that a lot of people have a lot of visions and a lot of creativity. They have, their own kind of creative universes.
Yeah.
And when one of the cool things about comics is that they are a direct pipeline to kids.
Oh yeah.
And if you want to do something that you want to incite the imagination in a child, whether it be an 8-year-old all the way up to a teenager, one of the best ways to pipeline that idea is to put it in comic book form.
Yeah.
And when you put things in comic book form, there is that there's kind of like the expectation that it will be more accessible to them. So
you're going to get, if you put it in a comic book, you're going to get everybody across the spectrum. You're going to get adults because adults used to read comic books, so they're just going to pick it up and kind of wander through it. The kids are going to pick it up because, kids read comic books. The ones in the middle, they're going to pick it up because, it's a comic book and it's colors and it's, this. All you got to do is feed it to them and make sure that they, it's palatable, and I think, if it's supposed to be funny, anybody from an adult to a child, they pick up that comic book and it's supposed to be funny, they're going to see where the humor is, and either the humor is going to appeal to them or it's not. But I think the comic book is a nice device, Yeah,
it is, and what it does is it provides a bite-sized story with some visuals so that people can digest it easily. Somebody mentioned in there, look at how other cultures engage in reading comics as adults and things like that. And I think that, maybe the decline in this country from adult comic reading could be, I think that it could be cultural, partly because of political climate and things like that. You look at people who lack creativity and wouldn't pick up comics, don't watch cartoons, don't look at 3D animation or movies and things like that.
Yes, I've seen them.
And you look at kind of that closed-in mindset, and you say, well, why are Republicans here at all? Oh, I'll get letters for that. Yes.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't know a Republican that actually reads a comic book.
Well, and the thing is, there's a certain mindset that's attracted to the kind of that political bent, and it's not creative. It's certainly they're not very empathetic, and the thing is, the most successful comics are like what you do. They portray situations that people can relate to. And sometimes they offer really off-the-wall solutions, funny solutions, things that you wouldn't normally think of. And that's the essence of stimulating a mind through that avenue. And there's a whole class of people who cannot tolerate anything that deviates from their single soundbite mindsets. And that's really unfortunate because I think as parents go, so do children in some ways. So if the parents don't see any value in comics, they may be denying their children the opportunity to get into an art form that could be very stimulating and really help their kids out with their own imagination.
Well, I think just like when we were growing up, all parents start out hating comic books. My mother also, she'll look at, me reading the comic books. She's like, no comic books, where's your lesson? Where's your books? Where, they want the best out of their children. And comic books, it goes the opposite direction. It's pure enjoyment. And they're like, my mother, I had the biggest, greatest set of comics, ever. And when I joined the military, I went off for AIT and basic training. I came back and I wanted to see my comic books, went to the storage room. She had put it all on the street and just I didn't have one comic book, and I said, Mama, how could you do that? Some of those books were, my uncle got them from, the 50s and the 60s. And I was like, man, but, that's, she said, you're an adult now. You don't have time for that, that business and stuff like that. So I think that's where it comes from. Some of the kids buy into it. They're like, well, Mom's right. I'm an adult now. I don't need that silliness. So I'm going to stop reading.
Time for me to get serious about life.
Yeah, it's the way you said that.
Yeah.
So and then they become Republicans because they're like, well, we don't read anymore, and we want to bother with that business because more times than not, if they read about it, they'll see themselves in the evil part. Oh, you're Dr. Doom. Oh, well, I appeal to that Dr. Doom character.
For me, I think when I don't remember what age I was, but you remember when heavy metal came out, right? When it was.
Oh my God, I still have them.
Man, I mean that to me was such a cool thing.
Yep.
And there were nakeds in there too.
Yes,
what
it
my brother
was.
used to call them. Oh, did you see that one? It had a bunch of nakeds in it. So, I mean, even that, as a teen, exposed me to the idea, because heavy metal was all sci-fi.
Yes, it was.
It was all sci-fi. There were some artists who presaged steampunk.
Uh-huh.
And those cool ideas, I mean, they make a difference on the creativity of a kid. Back when I was growing up, there was absolutely no novels where black folks were in science fiction. Okay?
You're right.
The books I read the whole Tom Swift series. I don't know if you heard about that, but that was, it was kind of like almost like a Johnny Quest of books. There was a young kid who was an inventor. His father was an inventor. He found these aliens in another dimension and things like that.
Wow.
And to read that stuff, as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, what have you, it was just so cool. It was just so cool.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in there that had anybody of any color other than white. At the time,
right.
I didn't think much of it. I didn't think much of it. I think more about it now because obviously it's great to have role models who look like you.
Yeah.
I mentioned last week that there's a whole bunch of kids now getting into elementary school, who haven't been, who when they were born, they were born when we had the first African American president. So by the time they reach second or third grade, that's all they will have known.
That's
How
right.
Cool is
That's
that?
right. It's standard.
How
it's
cool
standard.
Is that?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I remember us talking about that a couple of like last year sometime. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love Obama. I mean, I'm the biggest fan. I mean, I love him from the time he got there, and I'll do volunteer work and stuff like this, and I think it's just great. And I don't know, I got in an argument with some guy on Facebook, and I was like, oh, Obama's great, and this will be a new frontier. Because, like you say, black children will be born, and they're like, well, yeah, black president is a standard issue. It's just standard. It's not when we were born. Like, no, there will never be a black president. And we were told that from day one. And when it finally happened, I thought, well, you know what, the world's going to change. So
yes, that is true. Well. Things are going to change. Some things are going to stay the same. I mean, look at the state that you live in.
Yes. Unfortunately.
Look where you grew up. It's very tough.
Well, the thing about Alabama, why Alabama does not change, is because the establishment there, they see the changes that are coming, and they're quick to adapt to it. I.e.,
right.
like, for instance, when Martin Luther King was, doing the bus boycotting and stuff like that. If you actually lived there, you knew that the powers that be say, you know what, they're bringing down a lot of smoke on our heads, And if we go toe-to-toe with them, we're going to lose it. FBI, the CIA, the White House. We need to readjust, start hiring blacks into certain positions. Don't hire them into the best positions, but just hire them to the point where, you know, they're visible so that everybody can get off our backs. These guys, you know, Alabama didn't become Alabama because it's stupid. Alabama is really smart. And the powers that be down there said, hey, look, we got a black in charge. Look, we got this in charge. And, you know, the black would sit there, and I knew a bunch of positions of people that I knew that were in really high positions that my mom said, yeah, but he's only there and he doesn't really have any power. And whenever he says anything, they tell him to shut up. And I'm like, okay, so I see what's going on here. So it's just that they're more adaptable. But I think with Obama's presidency, I think we're going to get smarter and better to the point where we're like, you know, I'm not just going to sit here and be your token. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think that's coming out now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that, I mean, obviously there's the inevitable backlash. I mean, we're seeing it now. I mean, because essentially what happened was, you know, this president kind of destroyed the notion of white exceptionalism and white supremacy.
Yeah.
And of course that's going to be tough, you know, and it's going to be tough, you know, as far as money's concerned and things like that. You know, one of the things that I always point out, and I probably sound like a broken record on this show, but you know, you look at the kinds of creative things that can be done for people of color, and you look at what was his name, George Lucas having to self-fund Red Tails and things like that because or you know, Spike Lee having to amusingly go to crowdsourcing. All of our black projects for the last 50 years have been crowdsourced.
Well, have you heard the latest?
Call it that.
Have you heard the latest one? There's a director. He was supposed to do the Martin Luther King story, and they just kicked him off the project. I can't think of his name because I just saw it the other day on the news.
Okay.
But he was supposed to do the Martin Luther King story, and his name is Stone. Last name is Stone. He did a war movie a long time. Oliver Stone.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They were gonna
JFK and all that.
Roger. He was going to do the Martin Luther King story, and he tweeted. He said, they just kicked me off the MLK story, and because I wanted to do it my way. And then they said, well, he wanted to show that Martin Luther King was, he was also, he was a great man, but he was an adulterer. He was this, he did, he had drawbacks. And we don't want that.
That he was human, right.
He was human.
We picked him as human.
Exactly. So they say, well, we kicked him off the project. And they said, and then this one girl said, well, what happened to John Singleton and all these other black directors? Why didn't you ask them? Forrest Whitaker, yes. I mean, he did Bird, didn't he? But I don't know.
I don't remember.
They just didn't ask any black directors. They asked, a white director, and that kind of just didn't sit well with me. I was like, well, Dr. King is important. We in the South, Dr. King to me was a god because that's all he could be. To me, he wasn't a man because everybody talked about him, even down to the little infants. They talked about him.
Right.
So.
Right.
I didn't realize Dr. King wasn't actually a man. I mean, really actually a man until I was like in the Army and I was like 21 years old. And the King, I think Coretta Scott King put out this picture book. I think it was sometime in the 80s. And It was a picture book of all her little personal pictures, that she was that she just wanted to put out to the public, And in that book, I saw Dr. King. He hadn't combed his hair. And every picture that I've ever seen of Dr. King is, he's perfect. He's got perfect teeth, perfect, tones. And this guy sitting there, and he's sitting back on the bed, and his hair ain't combed, and his lips all big. I was like, wait a minute, that ain't Dr. King. And it's like, yeah, that's, and I looked at it, I was like, wow, his hair's nappy. He's a black man. And then it dawned on me that Dr. King is actually a man, and he's not just, they just build him up to the point where he just went to a status. And anyway, in the short story, that when this Oliver Stone thing jumped up, I was like, wow, that sent me back, you know.
Well, Oliver Stone has done some things that have been pretty sensational.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, we're talking about maybe about 2 weeks ago when he tweeted that he got kicked off.
Yes.
And
yes.
I have mixed feelings about that because, you just don't know what the depiction is going to be like until the film comes out of the editing room.
Well, Oliver Stone does not hold back. I mean, he goes for the jugular. I mean, when he does a story, he kind of tells it like it is, and I kind of think that's what you want, but you don't want to do that with Dr. King, because a lot of people are really, they don't want to hear it. They want to hear good things about him, and that's the end of it,
Well,
especially where I come from.
Yeah, but you've got the politics of race that you have to deal with, and the politics of race right now are that because of the president of the United States that we have, and the white backlash of his being president, and
yes.
all of the implication, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You look at like Arizona, which was not going to commemorate the national holiday, Martin Luther King's commemoration.
Arizona's out of control.
And the only reason they did was because they were going to lose $500 million and a Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden they got they got whatever.
Yeah.
But it's tough, and there's a plus and a minus to having the nation's first black president.
Oh yeah, I think it's all plus,
things
though.
Easier, and it makes a lot of stuff harder because you have people who are still pissed off that the South lost.
Yes.
Out there, okay, and those people, have been given cover by various groups, like the Tea Party. The Tea Party
yes.
ain't nothing but a bunch of low information racists.
They're the modern day Klan, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so it's good that people like you have very, very good. You have great depictions of people who look like us, and that's important because it's more than art. It's more than comedy. What it is it's an example for kids to read. And again, you're pipelining directly to our most creative minds. And what we have to admire someone like you who can do that and do it well, because it does make a difference. I mean, it really, really does. Well, I'm hoping
it'll.
Go ahead.
I'm hoping it'll continue because, like I said, I got this children's book coming out, and I'm hoping that'll catch on and it'll just mushroom from there because I want to do bigger and better things.
Yeah. Well, I there's no doubt that you're going to continue. And the fact of the matter is, being sort of, kind of, whatever, retired enough that you can devote the kind of time. Well, no, you can do. Having time. There's so many hours in a day. Like today, I had to go way to the south side of Chicago to do some work, and I so resented it because I'm on a roll writing. But I still have to pay. You got to pay rent. You got to buy groceries. You got to pay insurance. Look at all the stuff that still has to go on.
Yeah.
So there you go. So I appreciate what you do, and I love your art. We got a couple minutes left here. Is there anything you would like to add before we kind of close things out?
Like I said, I'll be at C2E2. Please come over and buy more comics. Let's see. My main goal is to try to get Cobb County into an animated feature. If there's any animators out there, hit me up on Facebook. You had an animator on a while back. I can't think of his name right now, but he did a really short animated feature, and he did it himself, but he did it really well about superheroes and blacks and how he portrayed, certain superheroes. black superheroes like the Black Goliath and stuff like that. I thought that
Right.
was awesome. And so, if anybody's out there like that, hit me up on Facebook, and that way we can get together and collaborate on something.
One of the things that the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website is trying to do is also to be a hub for the production of, a movie like that. So
Really?
perhaps, when you get to the point where you're ready to put the whole project together, maybe BSFS will have an imprint, the equivalent of a digital imprint where we can collectively release things, as part of BSFS.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because I'll send in the script and say, hey, listen, what about this? Because you guys are already a hub. You got a lot of talent. And I'm looking at the list and everything. I'm like, man, you guys got a ton of talent here, and they're all staring at you. All you got to do is manipulate and move around and say, hey, you do this, you do that.
Right. Right. Well, look, let me thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure being here, and I hope you had a good time. Hang on after we stop the recording.
Okay.
And like I said, I want to remind everybody that this show is live every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and all of the previous shows have been podcasted and are available on the Genesis Science Fiction Radio page of TalkShoe. And as usual, we're going to let Jarvis close it on out, and we will see you all next week. What's up, Jarvis?
Hey, I just want to thank everyone for participating. This was a wonderful show. I got to find out some things about Al that I didn't know, and I've been following him for at least like a year or two now. But it was a great show. Thank everyone for participating. Make sure to post any events you have, anything on our calendar. Make sure to post some of your photos and videos and things of that nature on the site, and just take a little time and drop in and speak to some of the other people and see what other people are doing on the site. We have some great things coming down the pipe. Right now, we're in the process of raising money for our first 3D film, which will pave the way equipment-wise and software and things of that nature for a multitude of films after that. So if you would, please stop by the site, click on the Indiegogo link, and make a contribution. If it's just $5, every penny is appreciated. Thank you again, everybody.
All right, sir, and to everybody there, good night, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good evening, and thanks a lot, Al.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
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 All right, thank you.